Across 10,000 conquered worlds, one name echoed to the ashes, Thraxian, supreme general of the Zargan Dominion, forged in war and sharpened by conquest. His name was synonymous with annihilation, entire civilizations erased, not for resistance, but for the mere audacity of existing outside the Dominion's will. No compromise, no surrender, only submission or silence. Thraxian was not born into power. He clawed his way up the ranks, earning his first command by personally executing his superior for hesitation. The Zargan Empire admired strength, and Thraxian had plenty of it. Ruthless, calculated, and absolute. Where his fleets went, resistance became myth, and surrender was the last prayer of any who remained. His tactics were flawless, his fleets unstoppable. He brought with him technological supremacy, psychic warfare, and bioweapons that turned oceans to ash. In the Imperial War archives, his campaigns filled volumes. The crystalline cities of Jorth shattered in orbit. The sentient forests of Kalar burned to cinders. The Etherean rings collapsed in a single hour. He didn't just win battles. He broke spirits, left symbols of hopelessness, and salted the stars with terror. So when a resource scout flagged a tiny human colony near the rim, Proxima Outpost, Thraxian barely glanced at the report. A single human settlement, lightly defended, primitive energy signatures, no known fleet activity, no galactic alliances. The recommendation from command was simple: eradicate and occupy, standard procedure. But Thraxian, ever the strategist, saw it as a training opportunity. Let the next generation of Zargan warriors earn their stripes here. He didn't even plan to attend the initial assault. Send Fleet 16, he instructed, wipe them out before breakfast. They'll scream in a dialect we won't bother to learn. He marked it as an afterthought, another notch in a long list of effortless victories. Reports came in. The humans used analog communications, wore unarmored suits, relied on combustion-based engines. Their most advanced technology could barely dent a scout cruiser, and yet protocol demanded an overwhelming response. Fleet 16 comprised 50 dreadships, 3 command carriers, and 12,000 warriors, more than enough to overwhelm a species, still using reinforced concrete. To Thraxian, it was practically a joke. He'd conquered aquatic civilizations capable of thought-merged fleets and vaporwave weaponry. He'd fought hive minds that rebuilt ships mid-battle. These humans were little more than a cleanup task. He didn't even give the mission his full attention. While Fleet 16 departed, Thraxian focused on his real target, the Mechary Trade Nexus, a rich, fortified stronghold that would require actual strategic brilliance. Proxima was just a warm-up. Still, the protocols demanded a declaration. Thraxian activated his Dominion broadcast relay, transmitting a signal to the Proxima colony in every detectable frequency. The message was short, untranslated, and void of emotion. Surrender or be deleted, a phrase known across the galaxy. The broadcast echoed into deep space, bouncing off satellites, caught in the gravity of dying moons, and finally reaching the ears of species that have been underestimated more times than history cared to count. The humans, in their fragile buildings and outdated comms towers, heard it loud and clear. A few laughed, some froze. Most didn't understand the language, but they understood the tone. A threat, a promise of extinction. Thraxian logged the broadcast and moved on. He wouldn't know the response until much later. Not because the humans were slow, but because their answer wouldn't come in words. It would come in scars, on his ships, on his fleet, and ultimately on his pride. For now, he rested on his reputation. The general who'd never faced defeat, the monster who turned legends into ruins. He expected nothing less here. After all, this was just another human colony. Weak, isolated, easy, but for all his intelligence, all his prowess, all his foresight, he missed one crucial variable. He chose the wrong human. One single human. Proxima Outpost had never seen war. Nestled at the edge of known space, it was a quiet colony, a place for settlers, scientists, and dreamers. Families raised crops under synthetic sunlight. Children learned about Earth from holograms. The air was clean, the sky artificial, but beautiful. It was a world built for peace, not defense. That piece ended the moment the sky caught fire. Captain Aria Vega had been an engineer once. She didn't wear medals or issue commands from behind reinforced glass. Her hands were scarred from plasma welders, her body trained not by academies but by survival. She came to Proxima to escape Earth's politics and its endless conflicts. She wasn't a soldier until the sky demanded she become one. The warning came too late. Sensors picked up strange distortions at the edge of the system. Then power died. Planetary grids blinked out like candles in a storm. Communications jammed. Static hissed over every channel. A single word broke through. Incoming. She saw the first strike from the observation deck. No sirens, just silence and then fury. A beam of purple light tore through the atmosphere, vaporizing the relay tower and half of Sector 9. Seconds later, dreadships emerged above the clouds, their hulls like moving obsidian, blocking out the sun. No demands, no negotiation, just annihilation. Thousands died in the first 10 minutes. Vega didn't have an army. She had miners, farmers, doctors. Most had never held a weapon. The colony had a few atmospheric fighters, outdated, low-orbit models that couldn't breach a dreadship's shields. But Vega moved quickly. She set up triage zones in underground maintenance tunnels, repurposed mining drones as improvised defense units, and rerouted power from agricultural grids to makeshift comms. She buried the bodies herself, at least the ones that hadn't been atomized. There was no time for grief, only choices. People looked to her not because she asked for it, but because she moved when others froze. While command centers turned to ash, Vega built a war room in the lower tunnels. She found the old colony blueprints, mapped the terrain, and started organizing volunteers. Every welder became a weapons tech. Every driver became a scout. Every scrap of metal became armor. They weren't ready, but they weren't willing to die silent either. One survivor described it best. We didn't want to fight, but they made it clear there would be no surrender. Vega's makeshift militia held the line in narrow valleys. Using terrain the Zargan commanders didn't bother to study. She led raids against scouting parties, stealing their tech, reverse engineering comlinks, gathering intel. Every strike cost lives, but each death bought time. And that time, she used well. It wasn't just about defense anymore. It was personal. Vega had lost her sister in the first wave. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She simply added another column to her attack plan. Zargan troops were efficient but predictable. They advanced in patterns. They relied on fear. Vega used that. She let them take the outer settlements, then detonated the geothermal lines underneath. She cut power grids right before enemy landings, forcing chaos into their formations. She jammed their targeting systems with weather balloons full of metal shrapnel and nanite dust. The Zargan assumed the colony meant weakness. They expected fear, disorganization, surrender. Instead, they got Vega. The turning point came when she captured a Zargan scout alive. From his uniform, she learned the name General Thraxian, a name she'd never heard, spoken with reverence by the prisoner and fear by others. She played recordings of his speeches. Annihilation, domination, purification, the usual tyrant language. She memorized his words, dissected his tone, and whispered her own promise in reply. You picked the wrong planet. The colony transformed under Vega's leadership. Roads became barricades. Schools became strategy centers. Even children took part, running messages through sewer lines, planting signal disruptors in enemy blind spots. For every drone the Zargan sent, the humans sent back a malfunctioning shell, reprogrammed to attack its former masters. They weren't fighting for conquest. They were fighting for home, for each other, for the right to live without kneeling. Aria Vega didn't see herself as special. She didn't give rousing speeches or declare herself a hero. She simply refused to lose. And in doing so, she gave her people the one thing Thraxian's forces hadn't prepared for: hope. That hope spread like fire. Even as buildings crumbled and friends died, they held the line. They weren't supposed to last a day, but they were still standing after a week. It wasn't victory yet, but it was defiance. And defiance, in human history, has always been the first step towards something bigger. The first Zargan fleet shattered Proxima's defenses like glass. But they didn't understand humans. They mistook silence for surrender. What they faced instead was recalibration. Captain Arya Vega knew brute force would never work. The enemy had superior firepower, impenetrable shielding, and fleet-scale coordination. So she turned to what humans do best. Think differently. She began with intelligence. Using fragments of downed drones and intercepted pulses from stolen Zargan comm units, she and her team began decoding patterns, tracking fleet trajectories, and analyzing vulnerabilities. The breakthrough came not from a weapon, but a conversation. Vega listened to a captured Zargan broadcast. The alien officer was mocking Proxima's resistance, detailing Thraxian's plans for full planetary cleansing. But buried in the transmission was something more, an encrypted reference to fleet positioning protocols. In Zargan hierarchy, no ship moved without pre-cleared spatial lanes. It was order within domination. And order, Vega realized, could be broken. With that intel, she drafted a plan, not one of brute defense, but surgical disruption. Her people would not face the fleet head-on. They would dismantle it from within. She began by targeting the navigational drones that mapped orbital deployment. Vega's team used repurposed mining drones, retrofitted with stolen comm signatures, to mimic Zargan beacons. Within hours, several dreadships had conflicting coordinates. Two collided in low orbit, the shockwave visible from the colony's surface. It wasn't a full victory, but it sent a message. Control was slipping. Thraxian, now personally overseeing the campaign from his flagship, tightened his grip. He saw disorder as weakness, and weakness was unacceptable. He doubled patrols, increased scans, and issued one command: find and eliminate the human commander. But Vega was already 10 moves ahead. She orchestrated a trap in the asteroid belt surrounding Proxima. The field was considered too volatile for combat maneuvers, but that's exactly why she chose it. She lured in a Zargan frigate with falsified distress signals, mimicking stranded Dominion troops. The moment it entered the belt, her team detonated mining charges, collapsing rock formations and severing escape routes. Then came the ambush. Vega's fighters, painted with reflective alloys to avoid detection, struck from every angle. They weren't fast, but they were relentless. They pierced the frigate's lower hull, planted data siphons, and escaped with its navigation AI. That AI changed everything. It revealed fleet blind spots, relay vulnerabilities, and, most importantly, the location of Thraxian's flagship, hidden behind a cloaking veil just outside Proxima's gravity well. Vega knew what she had to do: take out the flagship, and the entire fleet would lose cohesion. But it wouldn't be easy. The flagship's shields were impervious to orbital strikes. Vega devised a new plan: direct infiltration. Suicide to most, not to her. Using the scavenge cloaking tech from the downed frigate, she modified a shuttle to mimic Zargan emissions. A skeleton crew joined her: engineers, hackers, medics, no soldiers. They slipped through the perimeter during a solar flare that blinded most sensors. The timing had to be perfect. They boarded the flagship through a maintenance hatch meant for waste disposal. From there, they moved undetected, disabling internal defenses and reaching the power core. It was massive, pulsing with energy far beyond human tech. But every system has limits. While her team uploaded a virus into the power regulators, Vega climbed to the primary relay chamber. There, she saw him, not in person, but in a projection on the command dais. Thraxian, issuing orders, unaware that humans had breached his fortress. She didn't say anything. She didn't announce her presence. She simply overrode the internal comm system and sent one sentence through every Zargan channel: "Your god bleeds." Then she detonated the flagship's external shielding node. The explosion lit the sky for 8 seconds. The flagship reeled in space, exposed. Human fighters waiting in orbit launched immediately, striking at hull with EMP blasts and kinetic rods. The proud vessel, once feared across galaxies, shuddered, cracked, and went dark. On the ground, the remaining Zargan forces faltered. Orders ceased. Coordination failed. For the first time in history, they retreated. Thraxian, humiliated, furious, demanded a regroup. He couldn't comprehend how such a primitive species had outmaneuvered him. His logic couldn't process their unpredictability. He'd studied tactics, psychology, probability. What he'd never accounted for was a human refusal to play by the rules. Proxima wasn't a battlefield anymore. It was a message, a declaration. You cannot program fear into those who have nothing left to lose, and you cannot conquer a species that adapts faster than you can destroy. Thraxian had come expecting submission. Instead, he found chaos sharpened into strategy. He hadn't just picked the wrong planet. He'd picked the one species in the galaxy that fights harder the closer it gets to extinction. Thraxian did not retreat. That word had no place in his doctrine. The flagship's fall was a setback, not a defeat, or so he told himself. But something had shifted, something deep and corrosive. For the first time in 1,000 campaigns, his enemy had seen his face, had struck first, had won. He launched a final assault with everything he had left. No more delegation, no more test fleets. He descended on Proxima in person, his command vessel looming in low orbit, its hull glowing with weapons at full charge. Atmospheric disruptors tore open the skies. Gravity wells dropped, flattening hills. Plasma rain scorched the land. The full wrath of the Zargan Dominion poured down like a divine punishment. But Proxima had changed too. By now, the colony was no longer a settlement. It was a war machine. Every home reinforced, every tunnel wired, every mountain carved into artillery nests. The survivors had been hardened by fire and grief, and led by a woman who had turned pain into precision. Vega didn't panic. She didn't rally with grand speeches. She moved like conductor, orchestrating every strike, every countermeasure. The entire planet responded to her commands with perfect timing. The resistance no longer looked like civilians. They moved like a hive, but thought like individuals. Human chaos, sharpened into harmony. Thraxian's dropships met anti-air fire before they could fully descend. His ground troops landed into pre-laid mine grids. His air superiority collapsed when Vega's team activated the stolen Zargan drone fleet, now turned against its former masters. The very technology he had used to dominate was now tearing his forces apart. But Thraxian didn't stop. He pushed forward, descending into the atmosphere in a personal assault pod, surrounded by elite guards. He wanted to find the human commander himself. He wanted to break her, kill her in front of her people, make an example so brutal that the story of his rebellion would die with her. He landed at the ruins of the old Proxima Command Center. Vega was waiting. She stood unarmored, alone, holding nothing but a stolen Zargan plasma blade. The soldiers flanking Thraxian hesitated. Their sensors flickered, heat signatures unstable, comms disrupted. Vega had drawn them into a black zone. Nothing worked here but instinct. Thraxian stepped forward. He stood twice her height, his armor a fortress of alloy and energy. He looked at her with disdain. "You cost me ship's warrior's legacy," he growled through a voice modulator. "You are nothing." Vega didn't answer with words. She lunged. The fight wasn't fair. She knew it. Everyone watching knew it. But it wasn't about winning. It was about ending him. And ending him didn't require strength. It required understanding. She had studied Zargan movement, their combat rhythms, their neural link reliance. She struck where his armor was weakest: joints, sensor nodes, respiration valves. Every blow was targeted. Every feint designed to confuse his prediction algorithms. She moved like no enemy he'd ever faced. Not because she was better, but because she was unpredictable. The final moment came when Thraxian lifted her by the throat, ready to crush her windpipe. She smiled and detonated the plasma cell she had hidden in her glove. It was an explosion, just a burst of light, a sharp surge of energy, enough to sever his gauntlet's power feed. His hand fell limp. Vega landed, rolled, and buried the plasma blade through his midsection. Thraxian stumbled, stunned. He looked down as the energy pulsed through his suit, cooking systems from the inside out. He fell to one knee, gasping, more in disbelief than pain. "You lost," Vega whispered, "because you thought we were easy." Thraxian collapsed. The great general, the terror of galaxies, the Empire's blade. dead on the ground of a backwater colony he never even intended to visit. The remaining Zargan forces broke. Some fled, others surrendered. A few detonated their cores, choosing oblivion over shame. The Dominion tried to spin it as a rogue operation gone wrong. But the galaxy had already seen the footage, heard the story, watched the flagship fall and Thraxian die. The myth had cracked, and with it, the Empire's grip on its outer territories. Proxima was rebuilt, not as a colony, but as a symbol. Humanity didn't start the war, but they ended the myth of invincibility. Messages poured in from distant systems, offers of alliance, gratitude, requests for leadership. Even species that had never met a human before now looked to them with new eyes. Because in the end, it wasn't the weapons or technology that made humans terrifying. It was their refusal to be predictable, their ability to adapt, their quiet, stubborn defiance. And above all, the terrifying truth that one human, when pushed far enough, could unravel an empire. Thraxian didn't just pick the wrong target. He picked the one species in the universe who'd turn extinction into evolution.